if you go to the National Archives has like the Declaration of Independence. They claim. And you go and you stand in line and you go look at this little glass case and that's the Declaration of Independence, that's the Constitution. Last time I was there, it also had the Emancipation Proclamation. Every night they go down about 100 feet into a bomb shelter designed to withstand a 100 kiloton atomic bomb. Kind of cool, huh? You can write it up and down if you ask. Yeah.
Is it disintegrating now?
Yeah, there's a real problem with it. They're trying to control the oxygen, in the case, but it was out in the open for so long that it's, yeah. So the case is controlled, but
So it's not going to disintegrate.
They can't reverse it, but they've slowed it down dramatically. But that's the fake one.
Oh, yeah.
This is the real one. Yeah, this guy on the street said it's real, and he looked really trustworthy. So I bought $5. That was a good deal. How do we know it's original? How do we know this is the real Declaration of Independence?
Because you can smell it.
The original 1776 lamination. Yeah, that's how you know it's the real deal. And John Hancock hands-on broke a hole right there. He told me that, and I believe it. You didn't know I had the original. Are you as impressed as you look? You're not just acting, right? Yeah, it's pretty cool. Tip. Deal. And right here, there's actually a caret. You know, little carrots where you add a word. They were so busy or so in a hurry to finish writing it, describe writing as fast as they could. They made a mistake and they have to add a word. So that's on the original Declaration of Independence. Oh, I'm sorry, this Declaration of Independence. And I'm pretty proud of it. Huh? I'm giving you one where it's getting more difficult. As you get older, you get a little more far-sighted. What does far-sighted mean?
You see better.
Okay, it's close. You can see far. Nearsighted, you can see near but can't see far. I know that seems a little bit opposite, right? So I'm getting there. I'm not quite to reading glasses, but it's getting close. Yeah, right here, there's a caret. They have the word only. But that's the original. Anybody want to see it? Oh, one thing I almost forgot to add. And I forgot to add this when I talk about the Declaration of Independence. Oh, I'll come back to this. Let's get back to the King's Proclamation. Isn't that cool? Oh, speaking of that.
It's a NCW.
Oh, yeah. So I forgot my finger puppet. I have a finger puppet of Thomas Jefferson. You want to see my ventriloquism? You want to see it? You want to see it? You will not see my mouth move. Are you ready? Hi, I'm Thomas Jefferson. Did you see my mouth move?
No.
Yeah, no formal training, just years of practice. Hi, I can't do it. And this is it's a little finger puppet. And I also have Isaac Newton from the Enlightenment. Sorry. Come on, Margaret. Please shut the window. Okay. That's the only thing he said in Parliament. He was a member of Parliament for 10 years, and he said, those are the only words he ever said in his entire time in Parliament. One time he said, please shut the window. Really. That's really the only thing Isaac Newton said in Parliament. Oh, we should add that all founding fathers have magnetic heads. Yeah.
Magnetic personalities.
No. You hear that? Is that childish? So, what was the last part? Where they, what is it called where you play on people's fears? Anybody want to try the word? They look at the spelling. Demagoguery.
Yeah.
Demagoguery, playing on people's fears. And that was all the grievances. Who did they blame everything for? Everything was blamed on what person? The tyrant, King George III. Even though he really wasn't that much of a tyrant for that time. Okay, we would consider him a tyrant. And so we got, what was the big, everyone thought there'd be one big battle. What was the bloody battle on the Charleston Peninsula? I didn't know your map. Bunker Hill, but it was fought on what hill?
Breeze Hill.
Breeze Hill, yeah. And Oh, where did they get the cannon that they drug? Ticonderoga. Who was the hero that drugged the cannon or ordered it to be taken? Benedict Arnold is going to become the most famous traitor in American history. So we got to the proclamation. That was the answer to what was the petition they sent to the king? Olive branch. So he said, "Oh, you're going to be executed." Now think about what he's telling those people. The British have just left Boston. There are no British soldiers anywhere in the colonies. They've left. Now, there are British forces organizing up here in Halifax, which would be right about here on the map. No British soldiers. And they just told them all, "I don't care, I'm going to disembowel you." What might you be thinking now? We want to just go all the way. Independence. I mean, if they're going to disembowel us anyways, and they fled already, what the heck? We can't go back. What are we going to do? And then a couple more things happen. So we got British, that, and then in Virginia, oh, we're jumping right to here. The Royal Governor of Virginia, Lord Dunmore. This picture of Lord Dunmore right here. This was done in the 19th century. But he's wearing this new thing called a kilt. And Lord Dunmore, he's the Royal Governor of Virginia. He has no troops, and he ordered the militia to disarm. And they, of course, refused. The Virginia militia. You know, this kind of this rebellion is spreading. And so, to disarm them, and he didn't have soldiers, he made an offer. He said, if slaves come to him and agree to fight for the crown, they'll win their freedom. His whole point was to terrify the slave owners, saying, you're risking your entire livelihood with this militia and potential rebellion. Are you sure that's what you want? And thousands of slaves, enslaved people, would go join the British, fight with the British, win their freedom. Most of them would be settled in like Jamaica because they couldn't go back to the United States. And this is a picture of one of the soldiers, a painting of one, done long afterwards. But imagine the reaction amongst the plantation owners. The British are now threatening to arm the slaves. Their greatest fear, slave owners' greatest fear, is the slave rebellion. And it sounds like slave rebellion. That would be one of the things put as a grievance on the Declaration of Independence. So you have the British have fled, the King's Proclamation, and now this issue about slavery. And don't forget, they cut off the land. They want the speculators want to roll into here, and they're mad about that. These are all going to lead to the last straw. Going into Philadelphia by May of 1776, there was a lot of people, more than ever before, saying we should just go all the way and declare independence. And so when they met, right here, that's Independence Hall. That's the chair where Ben Franklin sat. There's a little sun here. They met. It's tiny. It's so small. It's not much bigger than, it's about the size of this room, really. And if you go there, it's really cool, but it's, wow, that's small. There's a little railing, you stand there. And when I was there the last time, there was 2 elementary classes in there. Oh, little kids running all over. And I got to know one little boy. His name was Jeremy. And I grew to hate Jeremy. Jeremy was running around, trying to climb over. And whoever the teacher, this is why I know Jeremy's name. The teacher or one of the age, or somebody just, the whole thing was, Jeremy, quit, Jeremy, get back here, Jeremy. Everybody there wanted to throw Jeremy through a window.
Administration.
And now he's in Congress. I made that. So that was 2019. So now Jeremy's like in junior high, but wreaking havoc all over Philadelphia. And so I'm standing there, and one time Jeremy ran right into me and looked up and goes, ha! And ran off. Jeremy. Which one of you was a Jeremy? We all know. Yeah, Jeremy. All right. So that's what the thing was. Should we declare independence was the question. In December 1775, most of the patriots were still for reconciliation. They're still for it. Less than 6 months later, they're going to be voting to declare independence. It's amazing how fast it happened. And so these are the big reasons. We said before, I just want to make sure we clarify. I know we have all the taxes and everything, it's stepping stone, but even after the Boston Tea Party, the vast majority of patriots were opposed. By May, it's turning. So the British have fled, we're all dead men, disemboweled, slaves, and that land. They want the land. And they know if they go back, the odds are this will permanently be given to another British colony. And so this is the evacuation of Boston when the British left. So this is the immediate reason. And so there's this turbulent political scene in Philadelphia. And back and forth. Are we going to leave? Are we going to stay? Are we going to leave? We're going to stay. And actually, the majority of the Pennsylvania delegation were for reconciliation. But behind the scenes, Sam Adams is working with local leaders, especially working people, and the working class. And this man, Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine was an Englishman who came there. And his idea was to make the colonies into truly this place where rights will flourish. And he would write a pamphlet called Common Sense. And Common Sense, hard to find anything that had more impact than Common Sense. It was written to justify independence, and at the time, it was much more widely read than the Declaration of Independence. And it's very populist in pushing its people to rebellion. Populist meaning it's appealing to regular people. Not as Jefferson was appealing to those few elite, wealthy thinkers. They had time to think. They didn't need to do their entire existence was survival. Jefferson had inherited a bunch of money. Paine wrote to regular people. And this would encourage the people of Pennsylvania to demand another election for representatives. And they pushed in representatives for independence. And that turned the entire tide. A couple things he wrote, very basic. Why does the king have power? Oh, I almost forgot. He wanted a republic. The most ultimate form of government would be a republic. If you don't know what a republic is, my guess is you do, because the United States is a republic. But make sure if you didn't know immediately, you have to know a republic is government by representation. So representatives, now they're not necessarily picked by the people. And if you didn't know that, write it down. You have to know that. I'm going to assume for the rest of the year you know what a republic is. So what gives the king power? Divine right means they get the power from God. And Paine brought up a very good point. Why should somebody by luck of birth have all this power? Why? Especially when you have a bunch of monarchs, when you have cousins marrying cousins. Yeah. There's issues with that. And you're stuck with whatever inbred fool is going to be king. Why should somebody by luck of birth have all this power? What gives them the power? No, it should be in the hands of the people. And he would say, same for wealth. Why should some people inherit a bunch of wealth and by luck of birth start out with everything, with all the opportunity, while most people don't have that? And so he was very egalitarian, meaning he wanted to level the upper and lower classes. His idea would be more like one big class. So there wouldn't be that big gap between the tiny few who have everything. So you can imagine most of the people at the Continental Congress didn't particularly like Thomas Paine. Thomas Jefferson was rich the old-fashioned way. What did he do? He was the firstborn, and he inherited all the slaves and everything else. He inherited it. He didn't do it. He inherited it. He started out with that. And so they didn't really like Paine. But the Adamses, especially Sam Adams, realized Thomas Paine will rally people. So he had an uneasy alliance with the Adamses, Sam and John. Mostly Sam. John didn't like him at all. I should add, after the revolution happened, they would abandon him. And he would go to France and usually be executed in the chaos of the French Revolution. He was all for it, and it went crazy. And they were going to leave him there. Somehow he escaped with his life. All the people he helped in the United States become independent, they abandoned him. So Thomas Paine is one of those, in a way, tragic characters. I like Thomas Paine. I have this picture here. I have this picture here next to somebody I despise, and so we'll get to him a little bit later. You know, he's a little bit higher. And so you can see the rumblings for independence. And there's going to be attempts to get independence. I forgot to do something. Everybody act busy for a second. Everybody act like you're doing something important. I have to send an email. It's very important. I have to get it out by the road. Just an answer to a question. Okay, good. Richard Henry Lee of Virginia, a couple different times, proposed independence. At first, the vote wasn't very close, and then finally, going into July, things began to turn. Just because, literally outside, inspired by Paine, there are working people in Philadelphia marching in front of Independence Hall, demanding independence. It's hard to avoid these angry people. On July 1st, the resolution was voted on 8-3, one state abstained. But on July 2nd, the vote was 12-1 for independence. Lee proposed it. Richard Henry Lee of Virginia. You might know his his nephew. Yeah, I think probably the most famous trader in American history beyond Benedict Arnold, Robert E. Lee, who would command the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia, the most famous Confederate commander. Isn't it ironic that his uncle was the one who proposed independence? And it passed on Independence Day. What day is Independence Day? July 2nd, 1776. Independence was declared July 2nd, 1776. Here is the famous painting of the toppling of King George's statue when they heard about it in New York City. Here is a note in the local Ben Franklin's paper. This day, the Honorable Continental Congress declared the United States free and independent states, July 2nd. John Adams would say that this date will be known throughout history. The only problem was this document was not ready. And so they're frantically trying to finish up the document as they're going through it, and it's going to take well into the next day to write it, and so it would not be ready until July 4th. And so that is why on top of the document they wrote the day it was ready. July 4th, 1776. But independence was declared July 2nd. Thus, one of those strange little quirks in history. So, almost everybody had gone home. John Hancock was one of the few there, so Hancock signed it because he had to. It wasn't seen as that big of a deal. And that went on. All these signatures down here would be later. When the war started going badly, they decided, we better act like we mean it. The war's going really bad. And so they kind of made everybody sign it. And a few people were like, I don't want my name on that. The British are winning. I don't want to be disavowed. And so this became a sign of, no, the war's going badly, but we're sticking with it. So Hancock later on say, I wrote my name big. If I'm going to sign my death warrant, I want them to read my name. No, he was just the only one to sign it. He just signed it. Then he made up that story after the fact. And so they sent out a handbill. And the handbill to all the states, that means it's done by a printing press. Oh, almost forgot. Have you heard the story of the Liberty Bell? So the Liberty Bell, I was told this in elementary school. I vividly remember this. In fact, I think we watched a little film. In fact, when I was in elementary school, we just had flip books. 16 millimeter film. I can vividly remember them reading the Declaration of Independence, and they're ringing the bell as they read it, and rang the bell so hard that the bell cracked. And people to this day wait in long lines to see the Liberty Bell. Did anyone see the Liberty Bell? It's right next to Independence Hall. It's cool. I did it. There's a picture of me with a really goofy expression, so I'm not going to show you.
Put that in the PowerPoint.
It looks something like, but I'll see if I can. I'll think. Huh? Valid point. And this is a famous story where they did that, and so people lined up, and it became, people started paying money to go during the rage of nationalism in the United States in the 1830s and 1840s. Is it true? Absolutely not. There was a bell, it did say Liberty on it, it was forged, they made a mistake in the forging, it was weak in one spot the first time it rang, it was cracked, had nothing to do with the Declaration of Independence, and people still line up to go see this thing, just like Plymouth Rock. There are a lot of myths in American history that just go on and on and on. What do we call those myths?
History.
Zombie myths. And that is from the worst movie ever made. Plan 9 from Outer Space. It's so awful, it's wonderful. I showed it to my special topics in American history class. We do a history of horror movies in the 1950 second semester, and we'll watch it. So, are you in second semester? Yeah. So, what's going to come out of this? Oh, let me go to the rest of the story. They pass this handbill around. And this is the handbill right here. This is it. This isn't the original. I have the original signed declaration. This is just the handbill. And this is how people all over the colonies found out, hey, guess what? You're now an independent country. What? I had no idea. But on top it says July 4th. So that's just what everyone's. And so they started just kind of having a little acknowledging it because of the handbill. And then in the wave of this new thing called nationalism in the 1830s, they started celebrating it more and more. And that's why July 4th. Does it matter what day it is? A slight bit, but not a lot. But it also shows that how, we just, it's kind of a mistake. It's a myth, that's July 4th, like the Liberty Bell. We just accept it. Some myths are more dangerous than others. So this in many ways is civil war. Patriots, also known as Whigs. Whigs were the minority group in Parliament that opposed the king's policies. By 1776, there were maybe 25% of the population. This is pure guessing. Adams would say a third, but it's probably 25%. Whigs were saying, British tax policies are only the revolution. So, it happens. Then, loyalists. They were also called Tories. They're the ones who were in Parliament who wanted the king's policies. There were probably more Tories, but they were spread out, and they were Tories for different reasons. The great advantage the Whigs had, the Patriots, they all wanted one thing. And so even people like Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine, who disagreed with each other on almost everything, they still want independence so they could agree on that one thing. That gave them advantage. And lastly, the vast majority were neutral. It's not their fight. But if one side does something to them, burns their home down while marching through, steals their food, armies at this time foraged, meaning they would go out and find food to survive, meaning steal from farmers. you steal a neutral farmer's crop and they become an enemy. And who's more likely to do it? Patriots or British soldiers? We'll come to that, but it will be the British, yeah? And so it's a civil war. And loyalists or patriot spies will become crucial to both sides. We see the same thing in the American Civil War. Well, General Howe was up in Halifax for this whole thing of independence. We are independent. And they declared independence, they all went home, and literally by the end of the month, in 3.5 weeks, the largest amphibious operation in history, at least the European history and the American history, took place. Hundreds of British ships and over 30,000 troops had set sail from Halifax under General William Howe right here. And they're going to crush this rebellion once and for all. So they declared independence with like this euphoria, and yet from the British. And where did they land? New York. They figured Boston's crazy, let's cut them off. Right here in the middle. Washington knew it was coming, but he had still maybe 1,000 men that had a little bit of training. The rest of his forces would be neutral. He didn't have 80 men, but Washington went down there to meet them. And this will become the crucial battles of New York. For some reason, I put a comma, and I decided to leave it. General Howe, and his brother was the Admiral Howe. They actually landed on this rocky island right here. You might have heard of it, called Staten Island. Now it's all people, but they landed there, and Washington knew it. Washington is in New York. New York City today is this massive area that is in New York proper, Manhattan Island, and Long Island. Oh, and Staten Island. Staten Island's right here. New York then was just the southern tip of Manhattan Island. If you go to New York City, you're like, that's where most people go to Manhattan. And that's all New York City was. Washington is there with maybe 1,000 kind of trained soldiers, but they were short of everything. And a few thousand militia. A few thousand more showed up after the British landed in Staten Island. And he knew the British are going to land on Long Island. Today, this is the Bronx. It's just all people. But back then, it was a rugged, a lot of like low mountains. Now it's it's a hump in the middle of town. But Washington decided foolishly to take his about 10,000 men and go here. He's outnumbered more than 3-1. Here's the thing. If you're outnumbered with an untrained army, you don't go from one island to another. An island, I don't know if you know what an island is, but an island is surrounded by water. Yeah, I know. How do you get off the island? Especially if the other side has the most powerful navy in the world. It was a terrible mistake, but Washington did it. He crossed over to Long Island. Now, if you go there today, you can walk along these heights. It just looks like it's kind of a steep walk up from the subway station, but you walk up and there's a couple plaques, but it's just all people. It's the Bronx. It's Brooklyn. There's people everywhere. And this is going to be the Battle of Brooklyn Heights. August 27th. Now, why do we have a phone out? Okay. Important, you can ask me for that. Assumption is something else. So, August 27th, 1776. And this would be one of the most crucial battles in American history. Washington put his main force here. And there's a couple of passes he put men here, but he didn't put any men here. And that's what the British did. They had so many more men, they could do an attack here and here with 20,000 men. And then Howe sent its best general, Clinton, around the flank. And Washington is going to make this mistake time after time after time. He doesn't protect his flank. It's called, he had hanging flanks. Which sounds like kind of a weird medieval name for a disease, but he had hanging flanks. Some weird disease you don't want to have. About a case of the hanging flanks. But When these men got behind Washington's militia, what did the militia do? They ran. The only thing that saved Washington's army, it got dark. And it's really gloomy, hilly. They couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't attack. So Washington was bottled up right here. They had dug trenches and a few kind of quick wooden forts, and they're stuck. And here comes one of the most crucial moments in history. If Washington's defeated, it's over. It's over. And so, we don't worry about that. Let's jump right to here. All the Royal Navy has to do is put a couple ships right here. And Washington's stuck. And Howe could easily then destroy Washington's army. Without this army, there's no revolution. That's all they have to do. Put a few ships here. So here's the Hudson River on the west side of Manhattan Island. The strait between Long Island and Manhattan Island is called New York City. They call it the East River. It's not a river, but everyone calls it the East River. All they had to do is put a few boats there. But it was kind of stormy, and the Howe brothers were kind of very confident, thinking the war was over. So the Royal Navy, all it had to do is that. They didn't put boats there. And so Washington had a bunch of men from Rhode Island who were fishermen, experienced at rowing the big whale boats, big rowboats. And he was able to gather enough of them. And here they are organizing it. Here's the evacuation. They did it in the middle of the night. This is from a postage stamp from 1951. And that's all they had to do, because the Royal Navy didn't block the fleet. And then they knew Howe was ready to attack. So he had his men light campfires along their trenches that night before. Like they're cooking dinner and they're getting ready for the night. Campfires lit, so the British scouts can see the campfires flickering. And then what did they do? Secretly went to the water, kind of little groups, and escaped. And they all made it over. They all made it over. It's called the miracle. I didn't write this down, but it's called the miracle of Kips Bay. Miracle of Kips Bay. And it's one of the greatest what-ifs in history. What if the Royal Navy had just put one or two ships there? That's all, just one or two ships. They couldn't have done it. There's no way. And Washington's army would have been trapped. Without Washington's army, there's no way the revolution could have won. And the Declaration of Independence would be some little footnote in British history that none of us would probably have ever known. The United States would not have happened. At least nothing as we know. I mean, it'd be totally different. We'd be speaking Bulgarian. I mean, there'd be all kinds of things. I mean, what other language would we speak, right? I'm saying Bulgarian. One of the great what-ifs in history. There's a few of them. Washington escaped into New York, and New York falls. While Washington's evacuating, he's in such a hurry, he forgets to burn the docks so the British could use them. But they lucked out. In the process of leaving and trying to get out so quick, the American soldiers accidentally set the docks on fire. So they lucked out. And they retreated. Now, there's going to be two more battles. Right up here at this heights at the end of Manhattan, they're called the Harlem Heights, now it's just a section of Manhattan. But there was a sharp fight there, and this time, Washington's forces in a rear guard fought better. They lost, but fought better. His flanks returned, but fought better. And then, a little bit further north at a place called White Plains, once again, Washington's rear guard was defeated, but they fought better. The problem is, most of his men, like the militia, are saying, what the heck am I doing? They're melting away. New York fell. Overnight, it went from, we're independent to, it's over. This was the lowest point. Right after independence, Washington had to cross, here's Manhattan Island, White Plains is here, he crossed the Hudson and had to flee into New Jersey. His army was just bleeding away. But General Howe was watching this, and Howe was thinking, war's over. And it's going into winter. It's hard to campaign in the winter. Your powder gets wet. There's no roads. And they have this vision of New Jersey being the howling wilderness. They don't want to do that in winter. And so they didn't aggressively follow Washington. That was another blown opportunity. If they would have aggressively followed Washington, there's no way his army would have survived. It was bleeding away as men deserted. Half of Washington's men didn't even have shoes as they're marching that miserable November and December across New Jersey. John Adams, they're meeting in Philadelphia, and the Continental Congress is like hair on fire panic. And Adams is now saying we got to fire Washington. Which that's another, whoa, they would have fired Washington. He wanted to replace him with this former British officer named Charles Lee. It would have been a disaster. What?
Hamilton connections.
Oh, yeah. There are elements of truth in the Hamilton musical.
Not all of it.
Not even close. But there really are elements of truth, yeah. So, let's get to something very important. Let's get to something very important. This gets to the two combatants. What advantages did each side have? Because Washington has an advantage as he escapes. His army's bleeding away. He's outnumbered now 15-1. Yet he still survives. And he wouldn't realize this for years. The British seem to have all the advantages. Let me put them out there. They all make sense. There's significantly more British people to call on. They have this organized government, not just a bunch of people that come and go from Philadelphia. And half of them are ready to run away. Money's huge. They have an established system of currency that people accept, and they can borrow money. Now let's review. How do governments borrow money? They issue what? Bonds. Would you buy a bond from the Continental Congress? Are they going to pay you back? Yeah, might be gone. Army, loyalists, so it's a civil war. They have great advantage there. American Indians are going to join the British, ironically. Remember, the French and Indian War was the opposite. But now the British might defend their land. And lastly, you're often slaves free. So this would be a good thing to put on the test. It's kind of like a table. I don't know how I'm going to do it. It'd be a good thing to know. I might just make it like you have to list it out. And I've decided. But you look at the Continentals. They have Washington. Washington's leadership was crucial. Washington had flaws, but he did get them across the East River. He did hold the army together. Washington had certain gifts. He did not know how to operate a modern battle. He always left his flanks hanging. That would be a problem time after time after time. France will eventually join in. So Britain will have to fight all over. The supply lines are significantly shorter. Britain had to take everything from across the sea, while armies on defense have that advantage. It's also called interior lines. I'll talk more about that later. They have a cause. I mean, what would be the reason for British soldiers to come fight? Are they going to get any benefit from the colonies?
Good morning, staff and students. As a reminder, earlier this week, we practiced a lock-in-place drill. And so at that time, I said later on this week, we would have a unannounced lock-in-place drill. So at this time, once again, this is a drill. We are going to be practicing a lock-in-place. So as a reminder, this indicates an emergency situation within the school building that could be initiated for a variety of reasons. So at this time, this is a drill, but we are going to practice once again a lock-in-place. So please stay in your area right now and wait for further instructions. Thank you.
Okay, if we do have an actual lock-in-place, we have to shut the blinds. So I'll ask people in the back row to grab the blind. We're not going to do it now. Shut the window. Lock-in-place, I mean, 99.9% of the time it is, you know, if something happens, if something's going on in the hallway, it's not that big of a deal. That 0.1%, we got to be ready, you know. We will lock in place, and we do have windows, just in case. We'll talk about that when it gets closer. But I just forgot we're going to have a drill. A couple of 2 years ago, we had a lock in place. You guys are freshmen?
Yes.
And so that's the kind of thing that we do. All right, let's finish this up. They have a cause. Liberty. But let me ask you a simple little question. Is that enough to get you to go stand in line as you got bust the ball in the face? Would you? Okay, there might be somebody. I gotta be honest with you. The cause might get you to volunteer. The cause won't get you to take a muscle ball. Huh? Well, but that's not the cause. Protecting your family is not the same as liberty. This concept of independence. It's different. But they are defending, that's different. It's your home. You're on the defensive. It is your home. You got the home field advantage. You're on the defensive. They've got to beat you. But that's not even the biggest advantage. The biggest advantage the colonists have, by far, without a doubt, and it's one that every army has in these, they don't need to be the strongest. They don't even need to win any battles. They just have to survive. That's all. If Washington's army's in the field, the fight goes on. Britain has to totally destroy them. All they need to do is hold out. As long as the most important army and the forces are on the field, they win. They can win. Who cares if New York falls? Washington's still fighting. Who cares if Philadelphia falls? Washington's still fighting and the cause goes on. Because eventually, what will Britain do? If the fight goes on and on. Yeah, eventually they'll give up. It's not worth it. And this is the part we have to add to this. This is something that Washington didn't understand to the end. And fortunately for the United States, the Confederates never really understood. Write this down. Wars are political. Do you have the political will to keep going? And eventually Britain will say, and they will, it's not worth it.
Thank you for your cooperation. Our lock-in-place drill is now over. Please remember, lock-in-place, that's an emergency situation within the building, as opposed to that shelter-in-place, which we practiced last week. And that's where there was a disturbance outside the building, where that's where it's important to always have all of our doors locked. And it's somewhat business as usual. There would be no passing periods if we were towards the end of a class period. But a shelter in place, that's that outside disturbance, whereas this lock in place, that is the internal disturbance. So once again, thank you for your cooperation. We'll continue practicing drills next week. And as a reminder, just want to say good luck to football tonight in Crosstown. That's 7 o'clock at Vigilante Stadium. And also to our cross-country teams. They're at the Mountain West Missoula tomorrow morning. So good luck to them as well. Have a great rest of the day. Go Blue.
All right, so all they need to do is survive. That's all they need to do, and the fight goes on. And wars are political. And do you have the political will? And eventually, no. This is what's going to happen in the Revolutionary War. The British will give up, and they win almost every battle. And this will happen in war after war. It will happen to the United States. The United States will get involved in a civil war in South Vietnam. And eventually we will go home because we lost the political will, and we lost. The United States is going to invade Iraq for reasons that unprovoked. We invaded Iraq in 2003. And the United States went home, and we lost. The United States will pick a side in the civil war in Afghanistan. And we will eventually leave because we didn't have the political will to survive, and we lost. It's not that we lost all the battles. We won most of the battles and lost. That's what that's what the British will learn. Obviously, the United States did not learn that. No, it's one of those like one big battle. It's always going to be. But this time it's different. This time we know better. We're so much smarter. We have helicopters. All right, so all they need to do is survive. Washington knows if he can show he's in the fight, we could win. And we're coming. So he fled across New Jersey, and they got to the Delaware River, and his army's bleeding away. The same people who rode them across the East River, those who were left, rode them across here. Rode them across the Delaware. I'm sorry, right here. Philadelphia's right there. And it's panic. Yeah! But fortunately for the United States, Howe decided to stay in New York where they're warm. And he just sent out small units to control, it was called a postal road, but think about nothing more than like 2 wagon runs. Just a few men to hold the road. And it's gonna wait until it warms up, finish him off. And he heard from loyalist spies Washington's army is disappearing. You could follow the path of Washington's march by bloody footprints. Because they didn't have shoes. It's over. It's over. And out at Trenton, right here, just across the river from where Washington is in Delaware, Howe stuck Hessians. Actually, Hesa, but in American history it's always pronounced Hessian. They are soldiers. Britain basically paid the king of Hesa and bought these soldiers. What do we call soldiers who are paid off to fight? Mercenaries. Now, soldiers are, American soldiers right now, they're paid to fight, they get benefits in college and things like that. But they join because they are also joining for the country. So technically, they're not mercenaries, they're paid. Private contractors are mercenaries. They're mercenaries. These poor German soldiers, some were blue, some were green, they're drafted, conscripted in the army, they have no choice, they're not getting any money, and then they're ordered to the wild wilderness of New Jersey. They have no reason why they're there. They all speak German. They're stuck out in the middle of nowhere, Trenton, New Jersey, and they are miserable. And can you imagine how much you would hate an occupying army if they spoke a different language? And they're miserable. And they're stuck out there in the wild wilderness. So their officers decided, we'll have a Christmas party for you guys. Normally, the Christmas celebration for the Germans would be about a 7-day drunken mess. They'll have a 1 day. They ship them a bunch of alcohol, basically schnapps and rum, and they would have a big party on Christmas Day. So they could have like a little bit of time to go home. We saw a little bit of that, remember the Vietnam what's going to be the condition of these Hessians the day after Christmas? I wonder if there's spies who will tell Washington. Huh? The answer is 7. Could you get the one mic, please? Let me sneak your air question. Yeah. Okay, they first actually voted in May, and they did now, and then they voted in June. So they actually voted a couple times. But the applicants kept bringing it back. And so then there's going to be new Pennsylvania delegates. New Pennsylvania delegates. There's Congress. I sent you my first. I would be.
No, you did not.
Okay.
Yeah. No, you did not. And the next day, 3 more states too. So.
Also, other battles in New York.
I'm gonna be a
White. Actually, one of those strange little things here. White is beautiful. It's like one of the most beautiful things. And it's like it really is, but it's like I want to go there, I want to see it, and it's like this is beautiful. And if you want to buy a little modest home, it's about $1 million.
Nice.
We're tiny. So what is perfect. Just remind me, no problem.
Thank you.
No problem, just remind me. Yeah. I'm good.
Dude, we were doing systems and equations. We're doing inverse operations. It's the same thing as I don't want to know. That's why I didn't realize so much algebra. Oh, thank you.
I know everything I was like.
She actually teaches. I mean, I'm surprised it's
My shoulder. That's the real thing. I don't want to watch my hair like
I want to hear you say.
That would actually be kind of funny. So I we're still filming. Look at this, America. All right.
Yeah.